This video is sponsored by Squarespace. Breath of the Wild 2's recent trailer has reignited many people's interest in the game, and just like the first trailer back in 2019, we're left with even more questions than answers. While the first trailer focuses on underground ruins, this one sends players high above the skies of Hyrule, with floating islands of places not seen in Breath of the Wild. Many of these locations feature architecture and ruins different to the ones seen on the surface, and with technology unlike the Sheikah's. In today's video, we'll be analyzing these ruins and discuss the different tribes which may have been responsible for them. And joining me today will be MaskedNintendoBandit. When it comes to mysterious tribes, the first group many think of are the ones referred to as the Zonai, described as a warlike tribe residing in the Faron region. But I'm about to suggest something that may shock you. While I do love the idea of this group being responsible for the ruins found in the sequel's trailer, what's seen suggests that this architecture was constructed by a different group. For the sake of fairness, I'll be going over the evidence that both supports and opposes this idea. Page 407 of Masterwork states that the Zonai tribe held a mystical power and had suddenly disappeared thousands of years ago. According to senior lead artist Makoto Yonezu, the group is a perished culture from prehistory, and their animal motifs scattered across Hyrule represent the different parts of the Triforce. Even the name itself comes from the word Zona, an anagram for Nazo, translating to mystery or mysterious. In the entirety of Breath of the Wild, the only time the word Zonai is brought up is from the name of their main base in Faron. But ever since the first trailer for Breath of the Wild sequel, many have theorized that this tribe may be involved in the story. Now, obviously I can't go into full detail on the Zonai, so if you want to watch a video solely focused on the barbarians of Faron, I'll have a link to my documentary down below. Since the Zonai are said to have disappeared thousands of years ago, a question that many have is, what happened to them? The fact that the caverns in the trailer are filled with what may be luminous stones, said to get their pale blue glow from the souls of the dead, suggests that there's a connection between it and the disappearance of the tribe. Another possibility brought up in my documentary is that this group may have migrated underground long ago, leaving behind the ruins on the surface. It explains their sudden disappearance, along with what's seen in the first trailer. However, with the recent trailer, we have floating islands covered with ruins, built by a mysterious group not seen in any of the footage. Perhaps the Zonai did disappear from Hyrule's surface, but instead of heading underground, they ascended above the clouds. But when it comes to the ruins themselves, there appears to be a lot more differences than similarities. The underground portion of the E3 2019 trailer is undoubtedly Zonai. Within the caves are the snake pillars often paired with the structures, and parts of the wall carvings feature an owl and dragon, a design similar to the animal motifs spread across Hyrule. One of the shots reveals what we can assume to be the entrance to this underground section, and it's covered with details connecting back to the Zonai. More of the snake columns are present, and the swirl design found on top is the same one on structures such as the giant dragon statue and Sargon Bridge. The patterns etched into the bigger pillars are also present on this entrance. It's without a doubt Zonai. Meanwhile, the sky architecture from the trailer is very different in design. It sort of resembles Japanese-styled structures and has a much more smooth and blocky kind of feel. Most ruins associated with the Zonai have been consistently paired with the swirl patterns, whether it be the tick swirl located on the more aged ruins or the ones found on the massive Lome labyrinths. Meanwhile, these structures lack this detail. In fact, the only solid connection we have to this tribe in the recent footage is the flamethrower-like item Link uses, as it's the same design as the dragon statues associated with the Zonai. It's true that much of this technology is powered by the green energy seen from the first trailer, but we have yet to get proof that this energy is directly connected to the Zonai. It's also worth noting the script seen on the floor to the left of this shot. It appears to be a new type of language, as it doesn't match any of the ancient Hylian, Gerudo, or Sheikah text we know of. This in itself suggests that the ones who constructed these ruins are a new race, which could link it back to the Zonai. The fragmented monument, an object that may have originated from this tribe, also has script on it that can be translated by one of the Lurelin residents. However, from the player's point of view, it's simply scribbles. At the moment, it's looking like the Zonai weren't responsible for what's seen on the floating islands, but since Ganondorf is found in a place closely connected to these barbarians, it continues to be an interesting subject to discuss. I won't spoil much, but a series of videos were released by Monster Maze and Zeltic regarding what's seen in the first trailer and how it ties into Ganondorf and the Zonai, and I'll have a link to those in the description in case you're interested.
When it comes to tribes associated with the heavens, other groups that come to mind are the Uka of Twilight Princess and the Wind tribe of the Minish Cap. Both of these groups have similar backstories. In fact, there's even plenty of evidence to suggest that these two groups share the same bloodline. According to what's written on the stone tablet within the Fortress of Winds, they used their wind magic to ascend to the cloud tops, along with their palace. King Gustav's figurine description states that he had close relations with the Wind tribe, and even holds the kinstone piece needed to gain access to the cloud tops. And their ruins are filled with Armos, along with the guardian of the Fortress of Winds, Mazal, linking this group back to ancient technology. Meanwhile, the Uka are said to have been a race closer to the gods than the Hylians, and even that Hyrule was built by them. They later used their technology to ascend above the heavens and live in their floating capital. While this group left the surface of Hyrule, they maintained contact with the royal family through the Dominion Rod, carried by a person referred to as the Messenger of the Heavens. Not only that, but Twilight Princess's Temple of Time is filled with Dominion Rod imagery. One of the words etched onto the walls is Copy Rod, which is the Japanese name for this item. The symbol present on the top of the item appears throughout the dungeon, whether it be the statues, doors, or columns. And wall carvings depict a person holding the Dominion Rod. So not only are they directly connected to ancient technology, but they also have close relations with the royal family. The stonework of the Wind Tribe ruins isn't too different from the one seen in the sequel to Breath of the Wild. Wind magic is often associated with the color green, examples being Farore's wind and the wind element, the source of the Wind Tribe's magic. And we know that the technology seen in the recent trailer appears to be powered by green energy. But even if there's no correlation, we also have the Dominion Rod, an item that takes control of statues within the Temple of Time. This item uses a similar green magic when used on said statues. But this is only one of many possibilities, and it's unclear whether Nintendo would bring these tribes back or connect them to the sequel's story. It's worth noting that from the concept art, there were plans to include the Minish, and since we've already been seeing many of these ideas come back in both the DLC and sequel of the game, something like this happening is very possible.
Speaking of things coming back, I'd like to thank the kind folks over at Squarespace for sponsoring yet another episode. If you've ever been interested in making a website, now is the time to start, because if you go to squarespace.com/NintendoBlackCrisis and use the code NintendoBlackCrisis, you can get 10% off your first order. Having a website can greatly benefit you whether it's for business or personal reasons, and Squarespace gives you many templates to choose from in case you're not sure where to start. Squarespace provides a number of tools making it extremely easy to add in videos, text, contact forms, you name it. Since I make content on YouTube, I use Squarespace to promote many of my popular videos, along with a suggestions page in case viewers want to send in an interesting video idea or theory. And having a website helps with promoting things not necessarily related to the channel itself, such as the official Zelda Minecraft server we've got going on. I've been making plenty of adjustments to the website throughout these past couple months, and I've learned a lot throughout this process. Combine that with the 24/7 email support, and you've got yourself an easy-to-use service. Just go to the link in the description, squarespace.com/NintendoBlackCrisis, to start your free trial now and get 10% off your first purchase. That's squarespace.com/NintendoBlackCrisis, and using the code NintendoBlackCrisis. The sequel to Breath of the Wild isn't the first game to focus on floating islands, as Skyward Sword takes place long before the establishment of the Hyrule Monarchy. Those on the surface were sent to the sky by Goddess Hylia following the breach of Demise and his army, who launched an attack in hopes of claiming the Triforce. A cloud barrier was erected, protecting the citizens from the dangers of the surface world, and the floating island was later called Skyloft. Following Demise's defeat, Zelda and Link return to the surface, where the Kingdom of Hyrule is established. It's unclear what happens to Skyloft or its residents, but it's possible that some remained above the clouds, and what's seen in the sequel's trailer is perhaps the remnants of this society. The elemental spirits Naedra, Farosh, and Dinraal take on the form of dragons, who at sunset ascend to the heavens. The portals the dragons fly through are very similar to the ones that open up in Skyward Sword, granting the hero access to the surface, and objects can still fall through this barrier, as seen in the game. The trailer for Breath of the Wild sequel includes a shot with structures resembling the sky architecture in the background. It's possible that these came from the islands directly above Hyrule. If objects are capable of breaking through the sky barrier, these islands could either be in Hyrule itself, or far above the clouds. Shamay directly references Skyward Sword when she asks Link if people used to live in the sky long ago. She wants to go to this land in the sky, and also ride a really big bird. Breath of the Wild's dragons felt like wasted potential in the first game, so it would be really nice if they had more of an involvement in the sequel's story.
Many have theorized this idea to be connected to the series' Sacred Realm, a location that's often depicted with floating islands, some of which hold ruins. It's worth noting that the structures themselves have a very sacred feel, especially the gates, which may be based off of Tori, Japanese gates often located at Shinto shrines. It represents a transition from the mundane to the sacred, and the strange-looking robot from the trailer is connected to these ruins, as the pinecone-shaped objects on its head are also located at the shrine-like structure. It also appears to be powered by the same energy from the Green Hand. So perhaps the ones who constructed these ruins weren't an individual group or race, but the gods themselves. Or perhaps it was a group of people who were held in high regard, such as the Sages. The Temple of Time was built by Rauru following the events of the Era of Chaos, when war broke out for dominion over the Sacred Realm and its golden power. And then there's the Sheikah, who are perhaps historically the most loyal group to the Hyrulean royal family. Their technology was key to defeating Calamity Ganon 10,000 years ago. While the robot from the trailer is very different from the Guardians, parts of it resemble an upside-down Sheikah eye, a symbol that may also be present on Link's shield pictured here. And speaking of Link, his right hand is clearly capable of powers similar to that of the Sheikah Slate, although slightly different. For instance, instead of freezing an object in space, it has the power to reverse time itself on that object. Perhaps their technology was based on this more ancient and divine form? NintendoBlackCrisis already covered the constellations found on the Sheikah technology in a much older video, and one suggestion was that their obsession with the heavens was due to it being the source of their ancient energy, a divine power gifted to the Sheikah directly from the gods. The Twitter user Tyler Townsend XP suggests that some of the constellations found within the shrines weren't meant to map the stars, but the floating islands themselves. Even if this isn't true, the tribe's obsession with the heavens combined with the existence of the floating islands, ones filled with architecture you could describe as sacred, is an extremely interesting connection, especially if the green energy is a more primitive source of power compared to the blue ancient energy which powers the technology of the Sheikah. And there's still the mystery of the giant telescopes found at the Akala and Hateno tech labs. It's likely that the constellation patterns covering the shrines are what led them to stargaze themselves as a way to uncover the mystery of their technology, and it makes you wonder if they ever ended up finding something that might be relevant to the sequel's story and the floating islands.
One thing I'll add regarding the floating islands is the possibility of Hyrule's landmasses also rising to the sky. Previously, we've talked about the lack of the Deku Tree in the trailer, how one possibility is that the Korok Forest rose along with other parts of Hyrule. One of my oldest theories on the channel was that prior to Breath of the Wild's events, the Lost Woods and Great Plateau swapped places. In all honesty, it's probably one of my weakest theories. However, one part of the video suggests that, since Hylia was capable of sending giant landmasses to the sky, perhaps the same could happen to Breath of the Wild's regions, including the Great Plateau. According to Rome, this was the birthplace of the Kingdom of Hyrule, and includes several ruins which have been theorized to be the remnants of Ocarina of Time's Castle Town. The fact that this location is elevated makes you question if it's hiding any secrets. At the moment, I'm worried that the sequel's Hyrule will be too similar to the first game, so having parts of it rise to become floating islands would add more variety to exploration. But I'm getting off track here. As expected, Nintendo is good at making trailers which leave you with even more questions than you had before. And that's one of the reasons why it's so fun to theorize about this game. If we were given all the answers, the overall experience wouldn't be nearly as enjoyable. I want to thank MaskedNintendoBandit for joining me on this video, and there will be a link to his video in the description where we talk about Hyrule's differences compared to the first game. Thanks to all my patrons who support me, and links to Twitter and Discord will be down below. I've been NintendoBlackCrisis, and I'll see you all next time.